Welcome back to the Aubergine Chef. Now today we'll be making sweet potato pie, and this is actually a recipe that my grandmother gave me. Now when I was growing up, we didn't really have sweet potato pie that often. I think we had it maybe once or twice for Thanksgiving when I was a kid, but other than that, what we really had a lot of was shoe fly pie and pumpkin pie, as well as apple pie and red velvet cake. Usually shoe fly pie and red velvet cake were kind of the standards. And I believe I have the red velvet cake recipe that she had as part of the scramble cake episode, and the shoe fly pie episode I know I've done before. So those are two recipes that my grandmother gave me that you have access to. And this is another one. Now with sweet potatoes, there's two routes you can go. You can go with fresh, raw sweet potatoes, which is I'm going to show you how to do. But you can also skip these earlier steps and just use canned sweet potatoes. Just make sure you drain out all the juices or liquids or syrups or whatever is in it. So what you want to do is you want to rinse off your sweet potato, just some cold water, rub it a little bit to get off some of the excess dirt, and then you just want to peel them. And I've already peeled some of them. I'll show you how to peel it just in case you aren't familiar with the peeler. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the ends, and then we're going to cut it up into quarters or cubes depending on how you do it. Now I have here about 2.5 pounds of sweet potatoes. We only need 17 ounces. So whatever I have excess of, I'm going to save for another episode, because I'm going to do another episode on sweet potatoes as well later in November. Okay, so I just have my Y peeler here. It's different than the standard peeler because it's a Y. I think it's a little bit easier to use. Now, while you're doing this, you also want to have a pot of water boiling. You just need enough water to cover the sweet potatoes so that they can boil and get soft. Okay, so like I said, cut off the edges. If there are any like hard, white, woody parts, you want to cut that off too, but we don't really have that problem. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it into quarters. So probably about here. And then like this. And these pieces are still kind of big, so I'll probably cut them in eighths. And that's probably as small as I'm going to go. The further you cut them, the more you cut them, the quicker they're going to cook. Alright, so I just have some plain water boiling. You can add salt if you really feel you need to. And we're just going to put in all of our sweet potato, and then we're going to boil them for about 30 minutes. Now the secret to adding something to a boiling liquid or a hot oil is that you want to have the vegetable, for example, partly submerged when you let go of it. You don't want to just drop it from here, because then you'll splash back. If it's already partly into the water, it won't splash back. It's one of those simple things that a lot of people don't think about, but it definitely saves you a lot of burned fingers. After you've boiled your sweet potatoes, go ahead and drain them in a colander. Make sure they're fork tender, and all that means is that you can stick a fork into them pretty easily and it either falls apart or it just is really soft. It's not as hard as it used to be. It's very tender. Separate out 17 ounces of sweet potato, and we're going to use that for this recipe. The rest of it you can freeze, use in a different recipe, or however you want to use it. To the sweet potatoes we have in this mixer, I've added 4 ounces of granulated sugar. Now you can add a little bit of a twist by adding it, cutting some of the white granulated sugar and adding in light brown or dark brown sugar for a little bit more of a warm flavor, a molasses flavor. So like 2 ounces of brown sugar, 2 ounces of granulated sugar, if you don't want to do 4 ounces of granulated sugar. I also have half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, but you don't have to measure it or anything like that, just eyeball it. And we're going to blend these together. Then on low speed, go ahead and gradually add in 3 slightly beaten eggs. Okay, and then on low speed, add in 8 ounces of buttermilk or sour cream. Or yogurt, something like that. Something with a little bit of a sour flavor to it. So you also want to have a finished unbaked pie shell ready to go. If you need to see how to make this, there is a pie episode. I'll go ahead and link to that in my blog post. And we're going to go ahead and add in the sweet potato pie filling. Now, I forgot to mention, or I don't think I remembered mentioning, that you want to make sure your sweet potatoes are pretty cool before you start adding in the remaining ingredients. So about room temperature, maybe a little bit warmer than that. It won't cook the eggs or anything like that, but you don't want it to be scalding hot right off the stove. Alright, and we're going to go into the oven at 375 degrees for about 35 to 40 minutes. Alright, so after about 35 to 45 minutes in the oven. You want to check the center of the sweet potato pie with a toothpick or a knife. A toothpick's a little bit better because it doesn't leave a large scar in your finished product. You want to stick it into the middle and pull it out, and it should come out clean. Now, before you serve it, you want to make sure it's cooled off either to room temperature or chilled, so that way it's nice and firm, and so that way it holds its shape, kind of like a pumpkin pie or a flan. But like a pumpkin pie, you can microwave it or warm it up before you serve it, before you serve the individual slice. Because sometimes these pies are a little bit better when they're warm. All right, so that's how you make the sweet potato pie. Now, just like pumpkin pie, feel free to serve it with different kinds of toppings, like whipped cream or buttercream. I think buttercream would be a little bit heavy. Whipped cream is a nice light topping, so that way it kind of complements the heavier custard in the sweet potato pie. Now, stay tuned for later in November, where we're going to make pumpkin pie, a traditional pumpkin pie, in contrast to the pumpkin mousse pie that I made last year, which you can still find online on YouTube and my blog. I'll make sure there's a little link to it in my blog post. And I'll also have a couple side dishes that you can serve during Thanksgiving dinner with the pumpkin pie episode to kind of make sure this is like a total Thanksgiving episode. But that's going to come probably the second or third week, or probably the second week in November. So that way it's closer to Thanksgiving. Anyway, I hope you learned a lot today. Thanks for watching. And remember, the Aubergine Chef, demystifying dessert, one recipe at a time.